In this class, we will be using the pose-to-pose animation method, and we'll set our three main key poses of the walk cycle, which are the contact poses. First, as always, let's have our file, assignment_section08, opened and check that we have our scene set up right. You'll notice on the right that we have a lot of different display layers created for our character, and these just help us hide the legs or arms if we need to at some point during our work, to focus our attention on a specific part of the body and not be distracted by all the details that are happening on the other parts. But we should use them only later in our process when we already have the keys set and we just want to finesse the movement. When keying the poses, we want all the parts of our body to be visible. Otherwise, we can get a mess in our timeline. Our timeline should be set to 25 frames. Since the walk itself takes 24 frames, we want to have our first pose from frame 1 copied to frame 25, so that our animation will cycle properly. And whenever you decide to make a change on frame 1 or 25, you should copy that change onto the other side as well, so that the first and last frames are identical. Otherwise, your animation will look bumpy. Let's go to the selection panel at the top and turn everything off except for the NURBS curves. We also need to leave this question mark turned on because otherwise we won't be able to select the knee controls, because they're made out of locators, which is a different type of object than the NURBS curves. We can actually just hide the knee controls this time because the character will be walking straight and we won't need to change their position. So that we won't be distracted by them, we can create their own display layer by clicking on this icon when the controls are selected and hide them separately. Now we no longer need this selectability option turned on and can work safely just by using the NURBS curves. Let's go to the settings. Here, as usual, we have our frame rate set to 24 frames per second, as well as the playback speed. Let's go down. Here in the Update View section, click All. That way, when playing the animation, all the viewports will update, not just the last window that you've been working in. And we'll be using a few separate camera angles, so that will be useful. Now in the Animation tab, let's leave the default in and out tangents set to Auto Ease and click Save. Let's make sure that we see only what we want to see in our viewport. So, go to the Show menu, click None, and then bring back the NURBS curves and polygons. As I've mentioned, we will need a few different camera angles to make our posing process quicker. So let's click this symbol to divide our window into 4 separate views. We will need to view our character from the right and front, so let's leave these cameras at the bottom as they are, and we can change the top left window to display our character from the left, and for that, we need to create a new orthographic back camera. Now we can see our character from the left side as well. We can also see that all these windows are displaying every detail of our rig, and every viewport has its own settings. So we need to go through all of them and hide the unnecessary things. Repeat this process in every window. Now let's move our cursor onto the Perspective Mode window and hit the spacebar to go back there. Finally, make sure that you have the Auto Key option turned on, and now let's draw a big box around our character and set a key on all the controls on the first frame. Don't forget to set the key first by hand, otherwise the Auto Key option won't work. Our scene is set. We can start posing our character. I feel that it is a good time to explain why our character's legs are controlled in a different way than the arms. As you know, our legs are positioned by controlling the feet, because where feet go, everything above them takes its place according to the foot position. The only thing we can adjust is the direction our knees are facing. This way of working with the bone chain is called the IK, or inverse kinematics, because the motion originates at the end of the bone chain and works its way up. The reason why our feet are set to IK is so that they can stay planted on the ground when we move the other parts of the body. The hands can also be set up this way, but in most cases it is preferred to have the hands set to FK, or forward kinematics, when the motion originates at the root and works its way out. So it starts with the chest, then goes to shoulder, then elbow, and finally the wrist. Even though it is more difficult to position the arm when using FK, later in the process it helps to create a better overlap and nicer, cleaner arcs. Because we need to set up the hand position by rotating the joints, it automatically creates a curved motion. Meanwhile, if we had the arms in IK mode and positioned them by translating them just as we do with the feet, that would create a movement which goes in a straight line. Okay, let's create our first contact pose. First, we start with the main body control because where it goes, everything follows. In the contact pose, we have our weight brought down a little, but not too much. And as I've said already, we will be using different camera modes because it'll be easier to position our character from one of the sides. In the contact pose, we want one of the feet to be positioned in front of the body, and it doesn't matter with which one will start the animation. So just pick one and go to the side view. Now we can bring that foot forward. Currently, our leg is overstretching, but that's okay because we'll use the foot roll and bring the toes up. That way our leg will be bent a little bit. We can actually now bring the weight back up a little bit, but I don't want any of the knees to be locked, so make sure that you have the leg at least a little bent. We can now position the other foot, but it is a bit difficult to select its control from this angle without selecting any other controls. So we can quickly jump to the perspective mode, select the foot, and go back to the side view. Bring the foot back as much as possible, and then also use the foot roll, only this time to lift the heel up. Not all the way up, just a little bit, and then push the foot even further back. As I've mentioned, the contact pose is the pose where one of the feet is in front of the body, and it is the first frame when it touches the ground. The other foot is positioned at the back, and the weight is brought a little bit down. This is also the pose where the leading foot comes furthest forward, and that gives us the information that the hips should be rotated at their extreme and should be rotated towards the leading foot. When we rotate the hips, that gives us further information on the pose. We can now pose the chest because we know that the chest should be going to the opposite side than the hips, so the chest will be rotated at its extreme as well, just on the opposite side. We also know that the arm on the opposite side of the leading foot will be positioned furthest forward as well. We can bring the arms down, both of them, and create a sort of neutral, relaxed pose for them. Let's bend the elbows a little bit, but not too much. We don't want our arms to be swinging hard. Okay? Now let's continue positioning the shoulders. This arm needs to be in front of the body, and the other arm behind it. We can also go to the side view to have a better understanding of the placement of our body parts. We don't want to have our arms spread too wide apart because it's a vanilla walk, so it is a neutral pose where the body is relaxed and doesn't have that much character to it. Everything just sort of flows, so we don't want our arms to be swinging that much. I think the way they are positioned currently works just fine. We can also look at the front. I know that I want to rotate this shoulder a little bit in and the other one out. Use the rotation Y channel to turn it to the side and rotation X to lower the arm down. Let's double-check the pose. We can bring the arms a bit closer to the body. When rotating the body parts, make sure that you're doing it in the right mode. Double-click the rotation tool icon to open up its settings, and check if you have the orientation set to world and not object mode, so that when you rotate a specific axis on the control, it would correspond with the same axis in the channel box, because the values that we see in the channel box are the world mode values. Finally, I want to rotate the hand in a little bit as well. Okay, and make sure that it's going straight down in the same direction that the arm above is going so that the wrist is not twisted. The other hand needs to be rotated to the side as well, keeping it positioned straight down and bent a little bit to the back. Shift-select both controls of the fingers and rotate the fingers. Bring the thumb in and down so that it's not pointing out. Something like that. Now the fingers are more relaxed. One more thing. We need to bring the feet out to the sides a little bit, because when we walk, we have a little bit of an angle. We don't walk pointing our feet straight. All right, we have our contact pose. Because before we even started positioning our character, we keyed all the controls on the first frame, we don't need to do that again here. And now we can go to the last frame, draw a box around our character, and hit the S to key everything on the last frame as well, so that we have identical poses on the first and the last frame saved. Now let's go to the middle of our animation on frame 13 and create another contact pose, but on the other side. We can help ourselves make this quicker by flipping some of the values. Select the chest. Currently, we're only using the rotation Y channel, so just remove the minus to flip our chest to the opposite side than it was before. Then select the hips. Here we need to add a minus. Okay, we already have our chest and hips positioned. All we need to do now is to move the feet and bring each foot to the opposite side than it was before. So the leading foot now needs to go back. Use the foot roll to lift up the heel. Then select the other foot, bring it forward, use the foot roll to the opposite side to lift the toes up. I need to bring my foot a little bit back so that my leg is not overstretching. And don't try too hard to have the feet positioned at the exact same spot that they were in the previous pose on the other side. We don't need to copy and paste the channel values to have the identical distances on both sides of the contact poses, because if we position them by hand, we'll have a little bit more variation in our cycle, and it won't look as mechanical. Now the arms. This arm we need to bring back, and we can just use the rotation Z channel to rotate it back. Let's bring the other arm forward. Somewhere here. We can now look from the front, use the rotation Y channel, and bring this arm even more in. And the other one we need to bring out a little bit. Okay. Perhaps this wrist is twisted a little bit too much. I'll bring it back. We could try to position the wrist according to this elbow control, which works kind of as a mark for where the center of our arm is. Let's check the wrist on the other side as well. I'll make some small changes. Let's also double-check our wrist's position on the first contact pose. We can improve it a little bit. The wrist on the left needs to be rotated back a little bit this way, and the other one as well. Because we made some changes on the first pose, now we need to select all the controls of our character and copy the pose to the last frame, middle mouse clicking on the frame and hitting S. Let's make sure our first and last frames are identical now. The other contact pose on frame 13 is looking good. And here it is. We have our 3 main key poses of the walk cycle, which are the contact poses, and in the next lesson, we'll move on and set our breakdown poses.